ultimately, what made it so easy to talk to you last month or whenever that was, when we connected by phone, was your naked voice was the thing that I had listened to, and it was late at night. Abby was asleep. I was sitting here in the living room where I am, and I listened to everything that there was, all, like the first episode and the YouTube videos, and I just thought, like, oh my God, the love that I have for this kid is so overwhelming. I need to reach out to him right away. And that mattered so much more than the fact that I also knew that in a few days I was going to drive to Brooklyn and get you this motherfucking 50% of the money you lend me. But the real lesson is that, like, I had been avoiding this. I'd been avoiding this person who loves me and who I love and who has such a rich history and who just, like, expressed himself in such a, like, honest and inspiring and emotional way that it made it really easy. And that's what real life is like, you know, like that. I have to fucking remember that, like, it's your podcast on the other end of the phone, not some imagined version of you and of everyone, you know. I really can do such damage to reality in isolation from people.
Welcome back to This Naked Voice. My name's Joey Cardella, and I'm your host. So this episode is part 2 with Erikk G. If you got the chance to listen to last episode, you got a short introduction to Erikk. He's a professor of philosophy and a podcast host of a podcast named The Relentless Picnic. He's also my best friend since 7th grade. Erikk and I have a long history, and this conversation here kind of goes into a bit of the ups and downs we've had over the last, how long has it been? 23 years of our friendship. Over time, I guess, patterns emerge in any friendship, and some are really good and some are not so good. And I think it's a testament to the character of any two individuals to see how much they love each other, to persevere through any struggles. And Erikk and I have grown apart a couple times during our adulthood, and we've always come back together. To give you some context, there are 2 main things that we speak about in this episode. They are the external events that transpired in Erikk's life, and no doubt they were significant. He went through a divorce, he got evicted from his apartment, and his dad died, all within a short period of time. And so, I mean, man, any one of those by itself is hard enough to deal with, but all 3, that's a lot. But there's also the underlying issues that accompany those things. What feelings of loss might bring on, feelings of shame, guilt, self-worth, all those things come up. And Erikk speaks to pretty much all of them in this episode. And part of what I'm working on in my life, in relationships, is to not let behaviors slide that affect the nature and well-being of our relationship. To me, it's about holding my loved ones accountable for their behaviors, because I expect the same from them. And I do it out of love and out of preservation in a way, because if I lose a relationship to Erikk, who's someone dear to me, it costs me a lot in my life. And man, shame is at the root of so much of this, and we'll get into that in the episode. But I just want to put it out on the table. Shame is so slippery and so frustrating to deal with. But as we point out in the episode, if shame is coming up in your life in any way, please don't try and deal with it in isolation, because it only grows in isolation. Reach out to whoever, talk about it. Shame starts to go away when it's talked about, as we talk about in this episode. So for some sensitive listeners, Erikk and I have a long history, and when I'm comfortable with someone, I tend to curse more often than not. So in this episode, I curse quite a bit. I took the liberties to bleep out a couple, and then after a while, I said, F it. I just curse too much, and I don't have the patience to bleep out every single one. So, mind your ears, and mind the little ones, and do the earmuffs thing if that's your thing. And I hope that this episode gives you some fodder to think about in your own life, in your own relationships. And I'd love to hear your feedback, what comes up for you after hearing it. So with that, let's get into the episode. I think we drop in talking about addiction and relationships, and we'll take it from there. Here we are with Erikk G. The definition of addiction that I really like is when you can never get enough of something that almost works. Right? So, and this is like having people around that it almost works, but it doesn't work. So it's like it's like similar but different. Where like I want connection, but this isn't the connection I want, and so now I'm gonna isolate even more. Like the connections possible, but not there, not with these people. That's what Peace Corps was like for me to a large degree, where like the people I wanted to be around weren't around, but the people who were closest to me were like, I don't want to be around these people, and so I'd close off even more, even though there were people around. I was like, ooh, no, I don't want to be around these people. Author's note: the people who I wanted to be around during Peace Corps were the other volunteers who really filled me up and saved me during that time. The people I did not want to be around were the people I was living with and working with for the first 8 months or so. But that's a story for another podcast episode. Okay, back to Erikk.
Yeah. Well, because it starts seeming like commentary on your desires or whatever when you start wanting something, and like you're just like, I want to be around people, and then like people show up and they're like, we're the worst, and then it starts feeling like, oh shit, all right, I guess I can't want that, or it can anyway. Like I remember this when in the time after I got divorced, and I started like getting on like the apps or whatever. I'm advising my friend Adam, who's also divorced, to do the same thing, which is like, it's not going to be good. It's just going to be new, and there's going to be some value in it, not because it's going to be the end, but just because it's going to be something. Mm-hmm. And to some degree, the isolationist person denies that fact. They're like, no, it doesn't matter. There's no more wasting my time with things that aren't quite right. There's just nothing. It's like a kind of like nihilism for people. When really, as we all know, that like even with bad relationships or relationships with people who are at odds with you in some way, the kinds of things that you're talking about, obviously you continue on and grow and learn about yourself and the world, and it is enriching in a way for the future, like in the way that you are not the same person coming out of the Peace Corps as you were going into it. There's always going to be some substantive content from a relationship with another person that you're really trying with that is going to be valuable. I'm really of that belief, which is not to say that you're not going to get heartbroken and hurt by people, because you certainly will, but that is going to be a part of what you actually think is valuable about life that the isolated person just does not want to sign up for at all.
Yeah, there's always growth in relationships, right? Good or bad. What the quality of the relationship isn't really the important thing. There's always going to be growth, like you're saying. Yeah,
I know, which is a little counterintuitive, I guess, but you're right. I think that's right.
I don't want to seek out bad relationships in the name of growth, but I can rest easy knowing at least there'll be growth.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So it's an argument to continue on trying to acquire new relationships with people, because there's that hedge where even if they're all terrible, or even if it's even hurtful to me, I come out the other side grown.
Yeah, but the thing is, I have to be willing to pursue growth, right? Because if not, then I'm just hurting myself. I'm just getting hurt, right? And then I'm getting then I'm just like taking on this pain, and I'm getting angrier, and I'm closing off more, right? I have to recognize that I need to be open to the lessons in this relationship, or the falling apart of this relationship. Because it's very easy for me to say, like, everybody fucking sucks. This is the worst. Everybody, be done. As opposed to going like, well, okay, like, how is this about me? And what could I have done better? And okay, how was this not about me? And whatever the questions that I need to ask. But I need to be willing to pursue that growth.
Yeah. I find myself thinking about that very thing in terms of either holding yourself tightly or being willing to sort of put yourself down. Like not put yourself down, like insult yourself, but like imagine yourself as a briefcase that you also confusingly are holding, you know, that like really ultimately like you have to, there are places that you really won't be able to go if you have to hold the like briefcase all the time. But obviously, if you're worried about what's in the briefcase being stolen or compromised or lost to you, then you obviously want to keep it really tight. And so I find myself thinking about like having the comfort and the space and the confidence to just like put myself down and just sort of like ride the wave, knowing that the briefcase is going to be there whenever I need it, which is not always something that you feel. Sometimes it really feels risky and dangerous, and probably sometimes it is really dangerous to sort of put yourself down and wander too far away. But I find that more often than not, what I need to talk myself into is stop holding myself sort of so tightly and be sort of more willing to put it down.
I mean, to me, it sounds like that's vulnerability. Is putting that briefcase down.
Yeah, yeah. That's probably right. Yeah,
right. Because that part of me that, because the briefcase analogy is new to me. I haven't heard that before.
I don't know where it comes from.
But yeah, I mean, I might get hurt. The part of me might feel lost, abused even. That's the risk I take and get into any relationship. And the whole point is over time I need to trust. Is this a person I might be able to trust leaving this briefcase with? Opening the briefcase for? Yeah. That's vulnerability, and it shouldn't happen with everybody.
I think that is right. I guess when I think the person you got to trust the most is yourself, right? Like the person you got to trust the most is that you, if you ride with someone else, that you're going to be able to get back to that, as it were, briefcase in some way. If you maybe this analogy would work. Like if you pack light, you don't have that much to lose or something like that. Like, I don't know. Like, I find myself thinking all the time that like a lot of the most positive moves in my life that I've made, I've instigated because I like refused to like allow myself to be like depressed or I refused to like enter into like a certain kind of loneliness. And sometimes that meant like I reached out really, really hard to other people. And other times it meant like, I like went to a bar and like drank, and that's not necessarily a positive move, but like there's a lot of swerving that I've done to avoid a place. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what I think about when I think of like holding on like really, really tight, that like I wasn't even letting myself go to a place because I was worried about me and how I would feel and how I would react in that vulnerable place. And I think that's not the way to do things. I think if I trusted myself more to like get through a very, very sad patch, some of the most positive moves I've made have come when I had no idea what the next move was, because I just sort of let myself put it down and feel for a sufficient long time. I don't always trust myself for that, though.
What makes a difference when you trust yourself and when you don't?
I don't know. What does make the difference? I mean, there is the more storms you weather as a person, maybe, I should just use I statements. The more storms that I weather as a person, it builds up my confidence to think I can get through more things. I can get through patches of sadness or despair or purposelessness or loneliness or anything, because I have an increasingly long record of getting through them and you know, not dying or falling into a pit. And so I have more faith in the future, or faith in myself to manage even things that I don't foresee. Like when I think, because I think about being vulnerable as a kind of as the opposite of distracting yourself or avoiding things, right? Like really dealing with things, really confronting things, and being honest with yourself, even when you don't know how to get out of it. I think one of the things that makes your conversation with Nate so raw and affecting and powerful for I frankly think any fucking person to listen to is that, like, you were at a moment where it really comes through that, like, you're not like working toward an answer, or like you're not saying like, well, it is what it is, and you're not saying like, I'm just gonna try this thing. You're just like, I don't know what to do. Like and that is something that people are scared to even say, that I'm even scared to say to myself sometimes, because I'm scared of how desperate I will feel on the other side of admitting that. And one difference, I suppose, is that when I trust myself enough to admit that to myself, I guess I have some kind of baseline faith that, like we were saying about relationships, like even in the pain, at least there will be growth. You know, if I can really trust that, as I can, you know, 60, 70% of the time, then I feel like I get somewhere.
Yeah.
But that's just how it feels from my end. I don't know if that's how it really was in that moment with you and Nate.
But from that logic, then from this point on, you'll only trust yourself.
Yeah, because otherwise I'd be doing what I knew to be the wrong thing. Yeah.
And my
but I do that sometimes.
But my guess is there's going to be times when you don't trust yourself moving forward.
Yeah, definitely, I think.
And so this is like a question of out of pure curiosity and love, but also in preparation for those times when you might not trust yourself. What will help you remember it's okay to trust yourself? Because it's not just about previous experience, that you've weathered it before, you've made it this far. Because by that logic, from here on out, you're only going to trust yourself. But my guess is you're not. So,
yeah, that's not how it really is. No, I mean, I think what a wise person would do in a situation like the one you're describing, where you start to lose trust in yourself and you know you need to get it back.
I don't care about a wise person. I care about Erikk.
Yeah. Erikk
is a wise person, but what is it?
Erikk sometimes wants to be a wise person, and sometimes Erikk needs to think about what the wise person would do in order to say what Erikk would do. But you're right. What Erikk would do, thinking himself trying to be wise, would be to really come with an open heart and with a humble.
Hold on, I'm gonna stop you even now, because I want to know, looking back, there have been times when you've not trusted yourself to be vulnerable, and when you've trusted yourself to be vulnerable and to lean into that place of feeling. Mm-hmm. And when you've trusted yourself to be in that place of feeling is when you've gotten the most growth in your life. So from that place of memory and from that place of feeling the difference, here's when I trusted myself. Here's when I didn't. Looking forward and without like projecting outwards into what might be a wise thing, like I want you to feel, if possible, like what was that difference and what can be the difference? What is true about Erikk in his life, in his experience, in his heart, in his being that will make the difference moving forward? Not from an up here place, from an in here place.
This is real talk. If it doesn't sound like an answer at first, it's only because I'm trying to do exactly what you're telling me to do and just speak from within.
Okay.
When I tie myself up and stultify myself the most, I convince myself that I have to do it all alone. And I can I contrive reasons to avoid and deny people who I love. I isolate myself. I'm embarrassed and ashamed when I'm at my worst. I'm putting more walls up around me because I'm trying to convince myself that I have to get myself out of this rut, that I can't enter certain arenas, right? And it always is isolating, and it always comes with not having the courage to answer the phone and talk to people about how terrible I'm doing. And I think that comes from a sense of guilt and shame. Shame because it often is very hard to say how terrible you're doing, to really say it out loud, as opposed to think it. And guilt because I convince myself that other people can't help. And this is where I'm going to start to answer you. In reality, in my memory, always the way that I ever get self-confidence in myself when I have lost it, or start to trust myself when I have failed, always it's my friends and people who are kind enough to love me and talk to me through things and remind me that the world is not one person big, And what I need to work on so much in those moments and the sort of lead ups to those moments is to not literally build walls preventing me from doing this, to trust myself enough to intone what is going on to people who love me is something I convince myself is unproductive and could lead to more pain and could lead to embarrassment. And I think be stronger than that. Don't need that, is what I say to myself. You don't need that. You will find a way to do it yourself. And so what I would say as an answer is admit what you need, and actually intone it out loud. That's what I can really fuck up sometimes. Because I keep it all in my head and I just wait for the moment where I've thought myself out of an emotional situation, right? That is what I do incredibly destructively a lot to people. That's what I've done to you at several different points in our relationship, in my life. I have just convinced myself that there's no amount of words that I could say to you that would reflect how I really feel and what was going on and how desperate things were in all kinds of different moments in my life. And I maybe this is just something that happens when you put up these walls like I do, but there was a period of time where it felt like the phone would ring and it would say Joey Cardella at some of the hallmark moments, most desperate moments of my life. Where I would be driving the U-Haul back from New York to after I had gotten evicted, and the phone would ring and I'd be there's just no amount of words that I could say to him that would convey where I'm at. And so just wait it out, or and the same thing with my mom getting evicted in the summer of last year, as we were packing up my dad's clothes and all this shit. And I knew part of what I was doing was avoiding you and avoiding everyone to some degree, because the idea of saying it out loud seemed impossible, and I just think that's so wrong. I don't know if that makes sense. Do you ever feel like that? Do you ever avoid people's phone calls? Because I know that I do this to an incredible degree, and you seem so much better at this than me.
It's for me. It's rare that I'll avoid phone calls from from certain people. I mean, there's certain people who, especially in those sorts of times, that I crave their phone calls. Because I've learned I don't need to know the words anymore. I can just say whatever the fuck comes out, and it doesn't matter. It's not about the words. It's about the fact that we're connecting in some way.
And that's right, of course. Like once we're on the phone, once you're talking to someone who loves you and someone you love, like that's true.
And there's some people who I don't want to talk to in those times, and it's a different feeling of like I just don't want to talk to this person right now. That's a different feeling, but I'm not sure what the difference is for you. You know, there's certain people who I know will be healing for me in that time, and there's certain people. So like that bit about the shame and the guilt, that doesn't come up. And you know, just this weekend, it was really fucking hard for me. I was super, super lonely. I mean, didn't come out of nowhere. It's been 3 months of, quarantine, right? But I mean, it hit me so hard. I mean, I felt it in my body. And I knew I could reach out to people. I knew I could call a few people. And I didn't want to. I just wanted someone to call me.
Yeah.
And if the phone rang, there are certain people who I knew I wouldn't pick up for. But there are certain people who I just craved a phone call from. So that's the difference.
But it's so healthy. I mean, it strikes me as so healthy to know in that moment that you could feel better engaging with people. I think that is some obvious truth about like times when you were vulnerable, that I don't know why, as a defense mechanism or as a way of isolating my problems from myself or as a way of not dealing with things, I really convinced myself that like there's no interaction. There's no amount of talking. It's never true, but it's so easy to think when you're alone.
Well, that's why I my sense is that like you obviously know. And it's that, and that's the hit for me is it's a shame piece. It's always a shame piece. And the reason I think it's a shame piece is because it's this urge to isolate, and shame grows in isolation. Shame fucking loves isolation. And that's the pattern that you just spoke to. And that I have witnessed over the years, that we have spoken about. And shame, the fucking wonderful thing about shame is that it goes away as soon as it's shared about. I mean, this doesn't like gone, but like it starts to dissipate as soon as it's like if you pick up the phone and be like, I'm having a really fucking hard time and I don't have any, like I'm feeling a lot of shame around this and I don't know what to say. Like it's just all of a sudden just starts like the air starts to get let out.
It's so true. I mean,
to go away.
That's the recipe for it to go away, is your point, right? Like the only thing that makes it go away is being somehow exposed to other people and for things to still be okay. That is when shame goes away.
Sharing it.
Yeah, sharing
about
right.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
There are a bunch of people from DC who know in some way that I left because I'm not there anymore, but who we were never exactly, friends from grad school or whatever, who I really do like have a great deal of like affection for. And sometimes my phone rings or I get an email from them and it's their name. And there's a part of me that thinks to myself, like, no, like I'm erased. you know, like don't they know like it's all gone or something like that. Because I think, like you're saying, the shame in some way is still so thick, and I've never quite shared with some people that the weight of having not shared that yet prevents me from thinking it possible to engage in any kind of communication that doesn't start with, so here's the thing, you know, I got evicted, and it just feels so hard to do. But I think I carry that sort of sense of like, well, in some way I've erased. I think I carry that through sometimes to even like talking to you or talking to others, people who are close to me and know already what happened. You know?
Shame's a fucking slippery topic. I mean, it's so different for everyone, and it's the same fucking story over and over for everybody. Like it's that weird thing where like everybody handles it differently, they feel about it differently, but it works in the same fashion across the board. You know, like you carry shame around getting evicted, getting divorced is what I'm hearing. And some people you've never talked to about it. Is that really what's keeping you from being in relationship with them? Do you really want relationship with those people?
Yeah, I mean, especially in like moments of loneliness, I think to myself like, where's that person that I haven't talked to for years, or I've done nothing to express my life to them for the past 3 years or whatever, or 2 years. Right, in moments, and of course, like you know, to some degree, yes, I do. I want to be in a relationship with them, but I just feel like I've like pre-blown it. I feel that way a lot, actually. It's just like, you blew this already, so don't waste their time to some degree.
Well, and here's the thing, like, who the are you to make that call?
Yeah, right. For them, you mean? Like, why would you make that call for them?
And I say that from, and you know, like, this is coming from a place of pure love, but like, who the are you to make that call? Because it comes to our relationship too. We're like, you know, this idea of like, I probably like blew it right, and I'm just gonna stay away. Like, this idea of, you know, it's probably been so long, like, I've really messed up, and that, I think, spirals the shame where like, I'm gonna stay further away because I've really fucking, I've not done a good job of keeping in touch, and all this stuff has happened, and oh man, I mean, tell me if I'm off the mark, but it feels like that's the story that plays out over and over.
Yes, you are not off the mark. That is the story, but only, I mean, I would say something like, especially with you. Okay, yeah. What I was saying is that is not off the mark. I would say that is especially the case with my relationship toward you, because I think in a moment, I mean, I remember this moment super clearly, so forgive me for going back all the way to February of 2018, but I really do remember being in this giant motherfucking truck with all my stuff in it, and having and my dog in the front seat, and having just cried in a parking lot for a very long time, and seeing your name come up on the phone as I was still in Maryland, trying to get to New York, and thinking to myself, like, really in that moment, like, this guy has been such a good friend to me, and I can't even pick up the phone right now. And in some degree, that builds on to the next time, because I think like the monumental asymmetry between how good you've been to me and how bad I've been to you, it just feels like I have to earn my way back in some way. And that's not a way that you make me feel. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. I'm trying to say that's a way that I make me feel.
And this is, I hear that, and I've seen that pattern play out over and over again over the years. And it crushes me every time I see it come up again, because it seems like no matter what I say, no matter what I do, it doesn't doesn't change it on the other end.
I
And
can see how that would be very frustrating.
it sure as is. And you know, and this is where I'm at a loss, right? Because here's something that I was studying just the other day. This idea of different levels of relationship, and in different levels of relationship, there's like, you know, like 3 levels of relationship. It can be in partnership. It can be, you know, just amongst anybody, friends, family, whatever. But essentially, like in the level 1 relationship, there's like my needs come first. So each partner or each person in the relationship really only cares about themselves, right? So there's everything has strings attached. Nothing's giving out of free will, right? Everything is like a ploy or a calculation, and everything is done with like debt accrued, right? And it's difficult to accept love because we don't ever know what the price is going to be, right? It's really, it's an immature level. It's very selfish. Mm-hmm. Then level 2 is like, it's a step above it, but it's a loving thing, but it's more conditional. You get yours and I get mine, right? So there is an exchange, but it's more like polite and chummy, but there's always a danger of it devolving into a level 1, because if I don't get my needs met, then I'm going to probably make sure that you don't get your needs met, right? Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then level 3 is this unconditional love, where the people in the relationship genuinely care about just trying to help meet the other person's needs, where the exchange is free flowing, where they're in service to each other, just not worrying about their needs, because they just trust that my needs are going to get met because this is a free flowing exchange. Right. And in relationship, if both people are at level 3, that's a beautiful way to be. But if someone's at a level 3, giving, and another person's at a level 2, it's hard to maintain for extended periods of time, because it can generate resentment at a certain point. Like, oh, I'm giving, right?
Right.
It's like lower levels are contagious, essentially. Higher levels, like the higher level can be as well, but I think the lower levels have a stronger pull. So I was studying that recently. And
they're easier to enter into in some way, right?
Yeah. But, you know, I bring it up because here's the thing. I fucking love you unconditionally. That's not going to change. I'm not going to ever devolve into a tit for tat with you. That's never a thing. And it doesn't matter with you not picking up my phone calls. Like, I'm never going to stop loving you. That's a fact. It does hurt when my phone calls go unanswered, and it does hurt when my texts go unanswered for as long as they do. And like, I know it comes from that place of you taking on shame for quote unquote not being a good enough friend, but like, I don't know how much more strongly to say it. Like, I don't fucking care about what's happened in the past or how you've been in the past. If I'm calling, it's because I just want to talk. Sometimes I need help. Sometimes it's only Erikk I want to talk to. Right? Like,
yeah, of course.
You know, it was you in the truck moving out, crying, and I don't know what I was doing at the time, but I might have needed help.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who I love and trust and admire, and there are very few who I love, trust, and admire as much as you.
I mean, I feel the same way, man. Like, just to say, like, I love, trust, and admire you, and frankly, like, I'm so like effervescently proud of you all the time as I like get wind of what you're up to, especially with this podcast. And I have all these like really nothing but positive feelings toward you. And I think about how desperately I want to express them, and just think, I recognize this is wrong, but think like, well, there's like no way for me to do that because I'm like so far behind in some way, or like I'm so, I've been so not present in little moments like that where, yeah, maybe you did need help, and maybe you did just need a friend to talk to, and maybe, and of course it would hurt. I think to myself in those moments where I hadn't shown up, right? Even a little bit, even in the most minimal way. And I do think it was a mistake, ultimately, for us to ever get like a money transaction involved, frankly, in our friendship. That was my mistake.
Oh, I didn't even, and here's the thing. I haven't even thought about that. Like there was at some point I was like, hey, like, yeah, can you do that? But like, dude, I wouldn't have made that if I needed it on a timeline. Like, so I don't view it as a mistake, and I hear you do, but I don't.
Well, I think it is. I hear you saying what you're saying now, and that does mean something to me, and I'm obviously glad to hear you say that, as opposed to some terrible version of a ghost of you that I've made up in my head where you're really worried about that, I mean, because here's what I think I don't want him to feel even more sort of wronged by me, because there's this baseline wrong where I'm still like literally in arrears. Talk about those levels of relationships and debts and things like that, right? I think introducing an actual debt into things can sometimes flip me into like level one thinking, to use those terms that you just sort of taught me.
Do you remember my friend Gino?
I do. I haven't thought about him for a long time. Yeah.
So it's funny. I just told this story earlier today to a friend. When I was like in early college and like hanging out with Gino, and I'd be back home, he would take me and Andrew and Josh to the library bar at times, and we meet up with his college friends. And there's a shit ton of people at that bar, and we go every now and then to the corner of the bar, and he and his friends would pull out a bunch of money, and they'd play some like dice game where they roll the dice and they'd throw dollars down, they'd bet with each other, and I'd watch as like they'd throw down $30-$40 amongst them, and Gina would lose like $40 in a matter of a couple minutes, or maybe he'd win $50 in a couple minutes or whatever. And when he'd lose money, I'd be like, dude, aren't you concerned or like annoyed that you just lost that much money that quickly? Because then he'd go out and he'd buy us drinks right afterwards, and like, I was like, aren't you worried about that or annoyed? He's like, nah, dude, whatever. I was like, what do you mean? He's like, look, they're all my friends, like that money all comes back, like I'm not worried about it at all.
Right.
And it was something totally just nonchalant that he said like that, like whatever, like that money comes back. It's like, this is just how we get through life. This is just a tool to get through life, and it's just going to my friends. Who the fuck cares? Right? It doesn't matter.
Right.
It's gonna come back to me in some way.
I mean, I get that, because I feel that way myself about, if the shoe were on the other foot,
Yeah.
I would feel the same way to you. And I have lent money and felt the same way to my friends before. Maybe not that much though. And I do think that sort of makes me feel, as maybe it should, I don't know, it makes me feel a little more urgently about it. And because I think of how significant that amount was to me then, and would be to me now, and still is, I mean, and I also hear, as I hear from everyone, I know it's hard. Like, I think about how much it would help you.
And look, if it was desperate, if I knew it was going to be desperate anytime soon, I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
right?
I know. This is the same kind of thing, right? This is me pre-thinking on behalf of my friends.
Yes.
In a way that is really disgusting.
Right. It's like, let me make my own fucking choices and deal with the consequences, right? Like, honestly, the only reason I was hesitant to do it was because of this very conundrum where, like, he's going to take on shame at maybe not being able to pay it back in any sort of fast time frame, and what that might do about maybe making him more distant in our friendship. Like, that's the last thing I want.
Right.
So, that was the only reason I was hesitant.
Yeah, because you've been paying attention to me or whatever, and you understood that the thing that might happen would happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a happy coincidence. I mean, this was really true. Like, I mean, I don't know if you connected these dots or whatever, but like, the government gave us $1,200. And basically, as soon as I heard about that, I was like, that's going to Joey. As soon as it hits, and actually, it was like a bit of we are in Maine now, and for some reason, my tax return hasn't been processed yet, and they sent a paper check to Brooklyn.
Oh, weird.
And so we drove back to Brooklyn to get the mail and a few other things, and then right around that time, this naked voice started coming out.
So funny.
Just like by accident. And it was I'm trying to maybe turn this into a little fable for myself to help myself going forward, because ultimately what made it so easy to talk to you last month or whenever that was, when we connected by phone, was your naked voice was the thing that I had listened to. And it was late at night. Abby was asleep. I was sitting here in the living room where I am, and I listened to everything that there was, all like the first episode and the YouTube videos, and I just thought, like, oh my God, the love that I have for this kid is so overwhelming. I need to reach out to him right away. And that mattered so much more than the fact that I also knew that in a few days I was going to drive to Brooklyn and get you this motherfucking 50% of the money you lend me. But the real lesson is that, like, I had been avoiding this. I'd been avoiding this person who loves me and who I love and who has such a rich history and who just like expressed himself in such a like honest and inspiring and emotional way that it made it really easy. And that's what real life is like, like that. I have to fucking remember that. Like, it's your podcast on the other end of the phone, not some imagined version of you and of everyone. I really can do such damage to reality in isolation from people.
Yeah, me too, man.
I was overwhelmed, like I said, by how proud of you and how inspiring and how affecting particularly that first episode of your podcast was, where you like told the story of your life, or I mean, I don't know if that's how you conceived of it, but in a lot of ways that's how I heard it. Such a narrativized, like, emotional and honest way. It managed to be short and real and it was so you. And it like, I really did feel in a certain way like I like the whole error of my ways in that night, whenever that night was. It was whatever the day before I texted you. Yeah, man, I am so deeply proud of you and proud to still be your friend. Although, as I'm expressing this to you, you probably already know that there is a part of me that feels like I don't deserve it at all.
You don't need to deserve my love, is my point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm fucked up in just this way. Because, like, let me tell you something. Abby tells me the same thing sometimes. So this is clearly revealing to me that, maybe because of how weird and distant my parents were, or maybe because of how my marriage devolved and ended. Clearly, I think in terms of earning love and deserving love in a way.
I hear you. And
Yeah, you've talked about this before.
I hear you. You know, okay, so let me see if I can put this in a way.
Okay.
You're not the only one who feels they need to deserve love. And it's a good awareness piece that you have now, because you're saying Abby tells you that I've told you this many times. And that's one of these pieces. I don't know if it's a briefcase piece or what, but that's a vulnerability piece. How do you show up each day trusting that you don't have to do a goddamn thing to be worthy of love? You can make mistakes. You can do 100%. You can do 50% and still be worthy of love.
I mean, two things come to mind simultaneously. One is like I feel this way about other people, so I should like understand that other people should feel this way about me. Like I feel this way about you, and I feel this way about Abby and my like I say on the podcast, like tiny basketball team of people that, you know, not a huge team, but a core group of people I will love forever no matter what. But then I really also think about like I really do think a kind of pattern of abuse, particularly in intimate relationships, was like really hammered into me by my ex, and like I need to. There may be some concrete things that I could do to unburden myself of that, because I do think about it a lot, and I'm in a very happy, loving relationship with Abby right now, and I don't want it to like affect. I don't want it to poison that, you know. And actually, that energy of like not wanting to fuck up, you know, cultivates this feeling of needing to deserve love, you know, because I think like you fucked it up once, you fucked it up. Don't fuck it up, you know. I'm just like there's a part of me that's like so worried about like sort of everything going away, you know?
Yeah.
Which is really silly because I have like a tremendous amount of things going for me. And so how do I free myself from this thing that actually actively prevents me from engaging with the people and things around me?
Well, you know, maybe it's a few steps. I mean,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, makes sense.
One is that, you know, let's talk about like get rid of the fairy tale illusion. Anything that I have, anything that you have, it can go away. And that's okay.
That's right.
It may suck. It may fucking hurt and feel like it's the worst thing in the world. And it's okay. It's not going to destroy us.
Yeah.
It didn't destroy you last time.
A piece of right, exactly. A piece of evidence for that is that it didn't do it last time.
We know that everything is temporary, Eric.
Yeah.
So it may go away. And that's okay. So while it's here, yeah, how do I savor the fuck out of it?
Yeah.
And when it goes away, how can I be grateful that it happened and mourn its loss heavily and feel the loss of it and not pretend like it's okay, right?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't have to be okay right away.
That is a really powerful lesson and a reason to be vulnerable and a reason to feel pain, to really let yourself feel that pain, because like you're saying, unless you have that period of mourning for what you've lost, you won't feel the full weight of the thing that you're afraid of if what you're afraid of is the loss, right? So like maybe what I did and where I sort of went wrong, and probably where a lot of people go wrong with loss is not maybe letting myself feel it as deeply. Frankly, man, a lot of I had like 3 losses kind of stacked up on each other, like my dad and my marriage and my apartment, and from here and now in June of 2020, they all still sort of feel like one thing, and I think that's a problem, because it just becomes this like generalized like capital letters like loss, and I don't think I was able to, or I mean I sure I was able to, I didn't anyway give each of them their own sort of proper attention. I remember saying to you maybe, or I mean maybe I said this to you, that I was much more shook by my divorce at the time than by my dad's death. Like that was where my mind was. That's probably bad. I mean, it just probably means there's much more work to be done on that for me to sort of mourn truthfully and fully with an eye toward, right, getting on the other side and accepting and even embracing the truth of what you're telling me, which is that, look, yeah, that's life. You could lose things. You did. Now what are you going to do with the things you have?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no question that you were hit so hard at that time. And I think you're right. There's something to the idea of not separating those 3 distinct losses out. Divorce, death of your father, and having to move away from a home that you were in for so long. Like those are significant. Oh, each of those are significant on their own, and then having them all piled up is enormous. And we talked about it earlier, this idea of you know this, that, logically, mentally, intellectually, you understand all these concepts. And like so many people, and myself included, we can know these things, but to experience them fully in our bodies and from an emotional place and spiritual place is a whole different ball game. And in terms of allowing yourself to be loved unconditionally and allowing yourself to really mourn the loss of all those things separately or together, whatever you have to do, that might take more than talk therapy. It might take more than like a conceptual understanding.
Yeah.
Of these things. And how invested in your own healing process are you? That's a rhetorical question.
No, right, but I take the rhetorical point of it. In other words, like, to be invested is to be sort of whole body and mind invested, not just mind and narrow band, as you put it. I think that is correct and also insightful for how to look at things. A narrow band in any respect is not going to be the solution.
No.
And frankly, I mean, although I was in talk therapy in 2017 and 2018, I'm not even doing that anymore. So there's a veritable cornucopia of possibilities for healing and reform that lie before me at this moment, even still.
Yeah. Yeah, and it fucking takes work, man. Oh, man. It really does.
I mean, of course it does. Why shouldn't it? I mean, it takes work to build a relationship, and there's like some kind of basic principles of conservation that say when that relationship is gone, whether by death or divorce or whatever, that there's going to be a lot of energy loose. So it's going to take a lot of doing to get right again, because that relationship wasn't nothing. It was a big something.
That's a good way to look at it. I actually hadn't considered that, but that's really accurate. All this energy that went into it, it's all of a sudden.
Yeah, it's got to be somewhere.
Yeah,
and especially as we sort of got into this via talking about like not trusting yourself and closing yourself off, where yourself is me here. I think that could be in response to sort of feeling that energy free floating out there too, right? Like when something combusts, like you made that noise, like, all that energy is dispersed, as it were. There's like a real instinct to just like, okay, like I gotta like go through this debris field now. And so all I have to do is just put up a shield and put my head down and figure it out. That's not, though, doing the work. That's avoiding the work. That actually is just putting it off, not helping. It seems to me, as I reflect back on those years in DC after, like from 2016 to 2018 or whatever, I really just put up a shield for a long time.
Yeah.
This, by the way, do you feel like you're working for free right now? Like, this sure feels like being coached by you. I don't know anything about the UCI principles or whatever, but I hear they're wanting anyway. All these things that you said like really matter to me. But I also do feel like this is part of what your friend Gino meant when he said it all comes back to you.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever. Because, I mean, this is, I feel immensely helped by you now and always, really. I mean, you should know, like, there's some shit that you've said to me over the years that I say all the time to my friends. And yeah, I mean,
Really?
especially the thing about, you said to me, it was in the basement of my mom's house back in the day, of like, convert guilt to gratitude. That is like a law of nature in my mind right now. So I'm just grateful to you.
Oh, man. That fills me up. Yeah. Erikk, I think about who I am today, and there have been, a lot of things that have made me who I am, but imagining my formative years without you, I cannot fathom what the fuck that would have been like.
You are in every nook and cranny of my memories of anything like when I became me. You are like around every corner and in every room.
As you might imagine, the conversation between Erikk and I goes on. It did go on. And this part that you heard today was really the part that I wanted to highlight or focus on, because this was the part where Erikk and I got to zero in on kind of the crux of what was keeping us apart for so many years. And, I don't know that we solved anything per se, but we certainly brought a lot into the light. We got to talk honestly about it and vulnerably about it. And I know that something or some things shifted for him. And for me, it just felt good to be able to speak so candidly from a place of love with him. True friendship to me is not about having a relationship where everything is hunky-dory all the time, where all we do is get along and have a good time. True friendship to me is about having someone in my life who is going to love me enough to hold me to my highest standard, and who is going to allow me to do the same for them, for the sake of our relationship, for the sake of being the best people we can be in each other's lives, and for other people. I'm genuinely curious what came up for you in this episode. Do you have friends like this in your life? Who are they? Do you get to have conversations like this with them? How do they go? Are you afraid to have conversations with friends about this sort of stuff? I want to thank Erikk again for showing up and allowing himself to be so vulnerable in this public space. It is not an easy thing to do, knowing that our shame will be put on display. Our questions about our self-worth are gonna be put on display for people to witness in a public way. It takes a lot of courage to do so. So thank you, Erikk, for showing up and for being so willing to show up courageously like you did. You can find more of Erikk by searching for his podcast. Look for The Relentless Picnic anywhere that podcasts are found. If you're enjoying this podcast, please go leave a 5-star rating and review. You could find more at thisnakedvoice.com. You could find me on Instagram, thisnakedvoice. And until next time, be good to yourself.